Hello, my name is Blue Flame and I make videos about whatever I want. And today, I want to tell you why Marvel Superhero Island isn't going anywhere. Marvel Superhero Island is a land at Islands of Adventure in the Universal Orlando Resort, and it is a very important theme park land. Not only was it a very good one, as it showcased the ability of Universal to create theme parks back when Islands of Adventure opened, and still is a good land to this day despite it aging, but its existence has dramatic consequences for American theme parks. I've talked about this before, and I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you already know some about the topic, so I'll keep it brief. In the 90s, Universal tried to make a deal with DC to make a land at the park that would become Islands of Adventure, and DC backed out. So Universal made a deal with Marvel instead, and then in 2009, Disney bought Marvel. So, Universal has the theme park rights to Marvel attractions east of the Mississippi River in America, and that basically means Disney cannot make Marvel attractions in Orlando. Universal also owns these rights in perpetuity, as long as the characters from Marvel families appear in the park. Disney cannot use them. So, Dr. Doom Ride, he's a Fantastic Four villain, so no Fantastic Four. Hulk Coaster, he's part of the Avengers family, so no Avengers. Storm, X-Men, no X-Men, and so on. The only exception really being Guardians of the Galaxy. So now, not only can Disney not use one of their biggest franchises, but Universal is promoting a competitor's franchise. They sell merch from Disney Marvel projects in their stores, and then have to give Disney a cut of the profit. The other catch for Universal is that they need permission from Marvel to make any significant expansions. They're technically allowed to expand according to contract, but they need permission from Marvel for anything major. So even if they can prove additions wouldn't be bad for Marvel's business, as the contract says they have to, Disney still won't let them, because Disney owns Marvel, and Universal growing is bad for Disney's business. So Disney can still stop them, and they could argue against it, but no one, not even big companies, want to get into legal battles they don't need to, especially with Disney. So they essentially can't expand. Ever since Disney bought Marvel, there have been rumors of this land being replaced, but I'm here to tell you that isn't happening. First off, Marvel is the biggest media franchise in the world right now. It's more popular than it ever has been, more so than when Universal made the Marvel deal. It is an extremely valuable brand, and they wouldn't just get rid of it on a whim. They need a big IP to replace it, one that could go toe-to-toe, and one that can hopefully appeal to the same demographic, and there is no available IP that Universal could get their hands on that would appeal to that demographic the same. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Paramount would probably give it up, but it's not as popular as Marvel. Power Rangers? I don't know what Hasbro's relationship with Universal is like, but it's even less popular. Most people don't even know the franchise had 30 seasons and think it ended in the 90s. Transformers? This one is interesting because it's already at the resort, and they made a whole Transformers land in Beijing that some have already compared to Marvel Superhero Island in structure. But Transformers is a lot more popular in China than it is in the States, and you'd be paying Paramount an increased amount in licensing from their one ride for the property in the Studios Park to a whole land, money you don't need to spend for a less popular property. And I hear you asking, but what about DC? DC, being Marvel's biggest competitor and Universal's original choice, surely could compete with Marvel. But the thing is, DC is currently owned by Six Flags. Now Universal is a much bigger company and has the money to buy DC from Six Flags if Six Flags was willing to give it up. But Six Flags has over 50 attractions and stores and restaurants themed to DC across the US, to the point where it would be more expensive for them to have to retheme it. Even though it would mainly just be repainting coasters to more generic themes, there would still be a whole lot to do to remove the IP. But Six Flags did just merge with Cedar Fair, and Cedar Fair's former leaders were put in charge after the merger. So now, the new Six Flags Entertainment Corporation retains these rights, and it's hard to predict what they would do if Universal made the offer, because this company is under new management. This new management might decide that holding DC isn't worth it and would willingly sell. If they did, likely talking Universal up a bit to cover a cost of removing the theming and still have some in their pocket to invest in their parks. Or they could say, we want to double down on this IP, and they would start implementing it even more throughout their parks. It's hard to say because we don't know what this new management style really is. I could see both happening. Cedar Fair has built quality amusement parks with their only IP being the Peanuts, never really having any big IP touch their coasters or higher thrill rides. And it worked for them anyway. Cedar Fair parks have been much more highly regarded than the Six Flags parks were in recent years. And Cedar Fair won. Their leaders got higher control in the merger. But would they keep this philosophy, this idea that they can create quality parks and still thrive without IP? Or will they take the chance to keep IP? As far as I know, Cedar Fair never attempted to gain any IP. They only got peanuts when they bought Knott's Berry Farm. And while they've used it, it never seemed like their management treats IP as important as some others do. And gaining peanuts in the first place was secondary to adding Knott's Berry Farm to their collection of parks. But did they avoid IP out of principle, or just because of lack of opportunity? It could be that just like when they got the peanuts, they plan to implement DC now that they have it. We don't really know. There hasn't been any sign of DC spreading into the other parks post-merger because we haven't really seen the consequences of the merger yet. It's too new. But maybe we won't even need them to agree, because we actually don't know what the DC Six Flags contract is like. There are rumors that it could end near the end of the decade, and then Universal and Six Flags might end up in a bidding war over it. But while Universal could probably beat them, would they even want to make that investment? It depends. DC is currently less popular than Marvel, but it would be the best possible replacement they could get for Marvel. They'd have to spend money to retheme, and still be doing it to a less popular property. Now, I think that if the DCU being started by James Gunn takes off, and the movies make a lot of money, and put DC in the public eye, they would do it. But I don't think they need a property to be more popular than Marvel to replace it. If DC could feasibly compete, and they got the opportunity to work with such a big brand, and I've been underselling DC up to this point, they are a heavy hitter. With the benefit of being able to create new, quality attractions that will increase the quality of their park and allow them to even better compete with Disney, they'd consider it. But even if that all makes sense, there's still the biggest reason why Universal would want to keep Marvel. And that is that by removing it, they'd be handing it over to Disney. If they take down Marvel Superhero Island, the rights default back to Marvel's owners, Disney. They'd be able to put all their creativity into a DC land to compete with Disney, but they'd be allowing Disney to compete with them. Now, I don't think Universal is scared of Disney getting Marvel. That may sound strange, but I don't think they are, because Universal for decades has been growing, and actively competing with Disney, their market share growing larger and larger, basically ever since the first Harry Potter land. If Disney got Marvel in Disney World, what would they do with it? Do they even have room to put it in? Disney has a lot of room, but as of late they never seem to want to use it. And based on Disney's recent track record, even with Marvel, they might not use it in the best way they could. They'd probably end up doing what they've been doing in foreign parks and putting some standalone Marvel rides in Tomorrowland or something like that. Compare that to Universal and their top-tier immersive lands we've been getting with Epic Universe. If they took an IP like DC, which as addressed before, wouldn't be easy to get, they probably would make better additions that would draw a lot of people in. But is that a chance that Universal would want to take? Maybe once Marvel goes back to Disney and they can use it in Orlando, it would light a fire under them. Maybe they'd realize they need to invest, to expand, and give their all into quality attractions for the sake of brand synergy and keeping their foothold on the market. And Disney supposedly investing more in Marvel, finally bringing their e-ticket to California and Infinity Defense. And one more possibility, maybe Universal, if they had a good replacement, could strong-arm Disney and say, hey, we know you want Marvel, we've been keeping it from you, if you want it, we'll sell it to you for what it's worth. And they could have Disney pay them to buy the rights before doing anything to get rid of the IP, in case they don't want to pay. We'll only get rid of it if you pay, and it would be a big sum. I mean, big IP, the theme park rights to Marvel have to be highly valuable, but the thing is, they can keep Marvel away from Disney and still use whatever replacement they were able to get, especially now that they have large expansion pads at Epic Universe free for the taking. Even if they manage to get DC, they could put that at Epic Universe. Marvel's contract says that Marvel's competitors can't be in the same park, but Epic Universe and Islands of Adventure are two separate parks. There's no violation there. They could keep Marvel away from Disney and still have the room to expand. They don't need to replace anything right now. Tearing Marvel Super Island down and replacing it, even with an equal replacement, would still just be money they don't need to spend. Marvel Superhero Island is currently fine at Islands of Adventure. It's still liked, still visited, and it's not even the area of the park most in need of attention, like the Lost Continent or Toon Lagoon. Marvel is in far less need of change. To give it up would be to give their main competitor one of the most valuable IPs in the world, and even in the best case scenario of getting DC, spending money to secure a less valued replacement and then spending money to retheme or expand that land with the new IP It's just not needed. Not yet, anyway. Now, the biggest counter to my thesis is that a while back, there were news articles that stated that Universal was looking for replacements to Marvel Superhero Island. And articles like these aren't always legit. These theme park sites make things up all the time. But I think this is actually true, and you might think that contradicts everything I said I believe up until now, but my reasoning is that creative teams are always doing this sort of thing. Every time a new Disney movie comes out, Imagineers think of ways it could be in the parks. Now, most of the time, the movie isn't so big a hit they need to drop a bunch of money on putting it in as soon as possible. Most of this stuff doesn't even get used, but they're paid to think about it anyway, just in case they need it. I think that's what this is. Universal doesn't like promoting a competitor's brand and being unable to majorly improve the land, so they'll look into options. Most likely, whatever plans Universal Creative comes up with as a replacement options won't be enough to contradict the other points of spending money without purpose, of being too risky, or not being worth giving Disney Marvel back, but they are thinking about it. I'd be surprised if they hadn't been thinking about it. That's just how these companies work, and that's why I need to tell all of you that this doesn't really mean anything. Just because they've considered possible replacements doesn't mean they've decided to replace it or that they ever will replace it. Rumors of Marvel Superhero Island being replaced have been going on since 2009. It means nothing. And I don't mean to be overly negative. If you watched my DC is wasted on Six Flags video, you know that I think the best possible timeline would have been the one where DC did partner with Universal and Disney had access to Marvel since buying it. But even if that would be awesome, it's not what happened, and it's never gonna happen. It's a wonderful fantasy, but it's just a fantasy. Long story short, Marvel Superhero Island is sticking around for a while, and the only way I could see it going is if enough of the following happen. Marvel tanks in value as Marvel movies continue to underperform, the DCU makes DC really popular, and in a slim chance Six Flags is willing to give DC up, or some huge IP comes into Universal's possession that would be perfect for the space and be even better than Marvel, and a bunch of other highly unlikely factors that might influence this decision. Companies like this doing anything really depends on a lot of factors, and it will only happen if the factors are just right. So I think it's more likely things won't change, and MSI will stick around. Maybe I'm wrong, and in the next 5 years the whole of Marvel Superhero Island will be torn down and changed into Wicked like all those people on Twitter seem to want, completely humbling me. But what do you think? Tell me in the comments. And if you liked this video, check out my video on why DC is wasted on Six Flags. If you want to hear me talk about how badly Avengers Campus needed that e-ticket before it arrives, check out my video on what makes a good e-ticket. Thanks for watching.